Hello, and welcome to another episode of In Orbit. It's the podcast that explores how tech from space is helping empower a better world down here. I'm your host, Dallas Campbell. Today we're talking about design, and in particular, user-centered design. What's the difference between design and user-centered design? Well, that's exactly what we're going to be discussing today. I'm here, as ever, in the home of the Catapult in the Harwell campus here in Oxfordshire. And I'm joined by Giulia Bencini. She is the Senior Service Designer here at the Satellite Applications Catapult. We have Vasant Chari from the Connected Places Catapult, one of our sister catapults, and Tim Dudas from OpenStead. Welcome, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us on the podcast. Giulia, you're from here. Do you have an office here?
Yes, upstairs, yeah.
Is it a great explosion of creativity and exciting things? And
we are quite a big team, so I feel like we're spreading the word about Post-its and drawing things on walls.
Do you play with Lego during the day?
We do have Legos.
Seriously? Yeah, that's good. You're the Senior Service Designer.
Yes.
So just briefly, what does that mean?
It is a hard question. I feel like service design is one of those things that are quite intangible nowadays. But what I can say...
Are you a designer?
I am a designer,
okay.
Yes. And I'm part of the UCD team, which is the user-centered design team.
Okay.
So what we try to do is really support the space sector in trying to adopt a needs-driven approach to technology development.
You said user-centered
design.
This was one of the questions that I had when I was thinking about this. What's the difference between user-centered design and design? Because isn't all design kind of isn't the point of design to solve problems, to make solutions for things? So
yeah, I think probably in service design and user-centered design is very close to design thinking. Like we do adopt this design thinking. And I think it is a bit more intentionally going to the user and working with them. I think historically this has been done, but not always. Like when we think about back in the days, when you developed a chair, for example, and a big part of it was also like making it industrialized and apt for industrialization. So you did have different needs of different stakeholders, which is something that we're still trying to do nowadays. But I suppose like we're really intentionally trying to go to users.
So who's a user then?
It depends what you're working with. A user can be someone that is a human user, maybe like a company you're working with, or a specific end user, which is the person that is going to use the service or the product that you're developing. But also a user nowadays could be someone that is not human even, like nature, and maybe we're going to go a bit more into that. But it's and that's why it's not called, and I don't like to call it human-centered design.
No, I would never call it. I still want to just call it design. I kind of want the one word rather than the three words in my lifetime quest to kind of simplify things. I don't mean this in a sort of rude way. Why are you here? Like, here we are in a kind of company that talks about space. Where does the sort of user-centered design department fit into that?
I think it's something that is still quite novel. It's not new because we, as a team, we like to think that we have been around since like 12 years, more or less. But it's something novel to the space sector. There's not many, if not any other design teams that are doing what we do. There are design teams that are embedded into engineering teams.
Well, that's what I was going to say, because I can't think of an area more designed than the world of space. You know, the whole point about space is we're designing things to go and do things, whether it's a satellite or a launch facility.
That's probably where the difference comes in. So that's probably a type of design that is very much merged with engineering and is very practical in the sense of developing a product and something that needs to work in space. Yeah. Whereas what we do as user-centered design team is more related to making sure that we develop the right thing and not only developing the thing right. So it's not only about, okay, we're developing a good piece of technology that works and is amazing in collecting data, but it's more about who needs those data. Like, how are those data going to be used?
Okay.
is about it is merging a lot with the business and market side of things as well, making sure that there's a need for what we're developing and those things are going to be used and not just spending tons of money for something that then nobody's gonna need, basically.
Okay. So you're not designing sort of engineering solutions.
Nope.
I think this is in my brain, I'm thinking, okay, design. So you're designing kind of beyond the engineering.
It's It's more strategic and helping understanding needs it comes most of the times comes even before something gets developed.
Okay.
To define what needs to get developed.
Give me an example. Can you maybe give us an example just so I can wrap my brain around this?
So maybe I can touch upon something that we worked on a couple of months ago, which was connected to space-based solar power.
Right.
And we did a piece of work related to futures thinking.
So you're not designing the space-based solar panels, you're designing
how it looks like and what's the impact of developing a technology the way we're thinking about it now, so that we can go back one step and make changes before we make something that has a negative impact on communities, on the planet, on different users and stakeholders, basically.
Okay.
So in that case, it was very much, we often go out and talk to users through interviews or workshops. We collect requirements, like technology requirements, and then we bring those back to who develops the engineers, the technical people we work with, and they can develop things with intention.
Yeah. Okay. So it's kind of designed beyond our kind of normal way we might think about design.
Yeah.
So if someone was designing a chair, you'd be designing or working with companies who might be using the chair or people who might be using the chair to think about what they want from a chair and then go back to the chair manufacturer and go, have you thought about putting 4 legs on the chair?
Yeah.
Vasant, you're another Catapult person.
I am
but a different Catapult person.
Yes.
Connected Places Catapult. So
I used to lead the equivalent of Giulia's team, but in the Connected Places Catapult.
Okay.
So we apply the same sort of thinking to trains and buses and buildings.
Got it.
You might have heard of something called human factors, which is quite common in the transport world, which is effectively, and I'm sure a human factors expert will tell me off for saying this, but effectively user-centered design in that sort of space. And that is looking at how do people get on and off trains? What do they interact with in control rooms? What do they do in times of crisis? All of these things go into how do you design a train.
That's really interesting. So you wouldn't design the train, but you'd find out about what the problems people have getting off a train or whatever it might be.
Yeah, I mean, human factors experts would go into designing the train.
Do you remember
Absolutely.
that time on trains you had to put the window down and then reach outside to turn a handle? It was like the worst design ever, but we kind of just dealt with it because we're idiots. But then somebody clever presumably has fixed that now.
Yeah, but also that would have served a need at the time, which is
what need did that ever serve?
that you'd need to have someone looking out for where they're going to open the train door. I don't know. I wasn't behind that.
But I remember
design.
the time thinking, what? Just put a damn handle on the inside of the door, and then we could open the door.
The point here is that design in the way that Giulia and I think about it. You can do it in. You can describe it in circles and in squiggle diagrams and in diamonds, but really, like for me, there's sort of 3 core characteristics. One is you listen deeply to what your users, the people who use the thing, need. The second is that you test things. So you if you've got a great idea for, and again, I'm going to think in terms of stations. If you've got like a new idea for how a passenger flow is going to go, how a passenger is going to flow through a station, you might test it and go, oh no, that doesn't work because they all go to the lift instead of the stairs. We've got to change it. Let's push them towards the stairs. That sort of thing. And then the third area is that you're creative in the solution. You're relaxed about, if you learn something from testing, you might then have a new idea to as a way of solving that problem. And so the way Giulia's team and my team have been working together is just bringing that deep listening, like understand what people need, bringing that test things early and learn what doesn't work, and bring those new ideas to the sorts of problems that we have in space and in transport.
Wow, these are really fascinating ideas as well. Oh, I'm so happy you're here because I was really struggling reading all about this and not understanding. I'm going to be the biggest supporter of user-centered design.
That's always what happens. Once people find out what we do, what we actually do.
I love it when things make sense. It's really makes me really happy. Tim, you're not from a Catapult.
No,
you're from OpenStead.
That's right.
Tell us about OpenStead. So what do you do, and how do you fit into this design world?
Yes. Well, so we were an early stage startup. We started working with Connected Places Catapult at the beginning of the year as part of a program that they ran. As a startup, we are essentially looking at incentivizing adaptation in the built environment, particularly in the urban built environment, as a way to reduce climate risk. So that's things like flooding and heat stress. So how can we use adaptation, so nature-based solutions that can reduce the amount of flooding we experience that causes damage to buildings, that causes disruption to people's lives?
Wow. So what's a nature-based solution for climate? Is it we're going to plant some more trees?
Yeah, so trees are a really good one. They come in all like shapes and sizes. Typically, when you kind of hear nature-based solutions, you think of really big kind of like ecosystem, reforestation, coral reef kind of habitats. In the built environment, in the kind of urban context, it's things like retention basins, bioswales, pocket forests.
Bioswale? What's a bioswale?
It's essentially just a way of kind of organizing the ground so that the kind of plant can capture more water.
Okay.
And it's like specifically organized in a particular part of where a building might be.
And so where does the design element in what you do, where does that sort of come in? So you in terms of planting, are you sort of designing areas in cities where you might put a new park or?
No, so that's helpful to kind of clarify. We are a software solution. So we provide the technology that identifies where's there underused space. So where's there an opportunity to do something, and matching that with where's there a need to do something.
Right.
And so then that translation between there's a lot of risk over here, and there's also opportunity to address that risk with these solutions. That analysis is what we do. Let's
talk a little bit about space. Actually, talking about trains in the built environment is quite a good place, I think, to start, because we can kind of visualize things like trains and stations. And space, I always think, for a lot of people, it's a little bit more abstract. It's a little bit more amorphous. So where does user-centered design, it's my new favorite phrase, I'm going to use it all the time now, I'm never going to say design again. Where does user-centered design, where does that fit into the space industry? Where do we go with that?
Do you mind if I answer because Giulia's absolutely best on the space industry.
Okay.
I'm going to answer the industry point very quickly first, which is catapults exist to grow businesses, right? Catapults are here to bridge that gap between a great idea coming out of a university or in a company and their market for scale and commercialization. So I just want to set some context for what Giulia's about to say design is about listening to your customers, testing your solution and being creative about your options so that you can sell more stuff. So you can commercialize your solution. So we're actually going to talk about it in space, but really why are we all here today? It's to grow companies like Tim's.
So Tim is the kind of product.
Tim,
in this context.
Tim's the user.
No, I mean,
I hate
that.
the person. We are trying to help people like Tim to grow.
Tim's got a brilliant idea.
Yes.
And he's told us about it, and we're going to help Tim grow, and he's going to take his brilliant idea and apply it to other areas such as space. Giulia, you're poised, ready to jump in here. So design in space. So where do we start with that?
I think so. As I was saying, the type of design that we do specifically in space is quite novel, but is really needed, especially now. And that's because the space sector is being, and it still is very, very technical, very complex, and requires very specific skills to be understood. Not only like developing something that goes up in space, but even like the data that get collected, that is usually what we use for Earth.
You say that, and yet I'm just always bewildered by how utterly dependent modern civilization is on space.
I think, to be honest, design has been doing the work since quite a while now. Like if you think about Google Maps, for example, space is embedded in there, and design has done a hopefully good work to make sure that user and people can use it, not even knowing that there's space coming into that.
Yeah, that's my favorite analogy, actually. I always think with my daughter, I'm like, okay, Deliveroo as a business model only exists because Google Maps exists, and Google Maps exists only because you can put a rocket up into space and stick a satellite there.
Yeah. But
Sorry.
more and more, no, of course, like I think it's important to, and those are really good points. But I think more and more there is a growth in data, and like the scientific and technological capabilities that we have through space. Like we've been advanced technologies, and we, like, the space sector usually focuses on technologies. Like, can we make something smaller? Can we have a faster processing? Can we have more data coming through? But then if we can't interpret those data, and if we can't embed those data into systems and applications that people are going to use, those data are useless. So I think like a big part of the work that we do is that translation piece. We're not experts. We're not technical space engineers and experts. Also, because of that, I think we have this important role of translating.
I think that's a really interesting point, actually. I think it's really important to have non-experts, because if you just have experts, you just descend into this kind of niche level of, obviously you need experts, but actually having people outside who can sort of link these things with society is really, really important.
Precisely. And also challenge things.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I do find that like we tend to close ourselves in our own bubbles and be there, whereas as external people, we can challenge things and like bring them back to real problems and needs that people feel.
Yeah.
So I feel like space has a lot of potential, especially nowadays and like in the upcoming years, to support challenges on Earth and not only on Earth. But we do need translators to make that happen and to make people use space in the best way possible, basically.
And can I quickly add?
Of course,
and experts are humans too. Experts.
Thank you. Thank you so much for saying that. That we have this perception that experts are somehow some kind of alien species.
Well, to use a space analogy, no, experts are. They get stressed. They notice things that are under pressure. They might be subject to all sorts of behavioural biases. And actually, what design often does is thinks deeply about how do experts want to have that information?
Yeah.
How do others want to have that information? How might we present it in a way that gives it to both those different people in different ways?
Yeah. And can I ask actually, Vasant, why the sort of connection between your catapult and our catapult, if you like, is that a sort of deliberate thing? Are you all sort of working together as a big multi-catapult design team, or are you sort of siloed and you're just coming over for a bit to be on our podcast?
So I'd like to say, and one of the really exciting things about this program Designed to Deliver is it was really truly shaped by all three. So Digital Catapult was the third. Yeah. So they were the equivalent for, they can explain it better, but for digital things and connectivity and the likes. And what happened is, as a group of designers, we looked at our user companies and we said, how do we get companies to grow in our sectors? Well, we think the best way to get companies to grow in our sectors is to give them exposure to design consultancy support. So help them listen to their customers, help them test out their solutions, help them have new ideas about ways to solve their problems. And so we designed, sorry to overuse this phrase,
it's okay.
we designed this program to be collaborative. And so each of the three catapults, and Giulia can explain this in much better detail than me, but at a high level, each three catapults had a challenge, had a problem that was faced by their sector.
Yeah.
So Tim was responding to one of the challenges in the built environment. Satellite Applications had an equivalent. And then really excitingly for me in Connected Places Catapult is that each of the three catapults buddied with a place in the UK. So for us, it was the Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park in London, which is where Tim did his trials. For the Satellite Applications, it was Sussex Bay, which is the sea line of Sussex. And then for Digital Catapult, it was Bristol Knoll West.
And so you're aligned to a particular place in order to sort of solve the problems a particular place might be experiencing.
In effect, yes. So what that meant is that the companies would have access to the customers who are in that place to test their ideas. So Tim, how did you use the Olympic Park?
Yes. I was just going to say this was a really critical part of why this program was attractive to us.
So this is designed to deliver. That's the name. That's the name of the program.
That's right. Because particularly as an early stage startup, what you're really trying to demonstrate is traction and that people care about what you're doing and that they benefit from it, that it's providing some value either to users or to customers. And when you're dealing with things of the built environment or of the real world, whether it starts in the digital world first, you need places to test that. And it's so valuable to have all the stakeholders in the room from the get-go that say, we're bought into trying to see if this is useful.
Well, give us an example. So you're at the Olympic Park.
Yes.
What design problem are you solving, or what do your customers want, and what do your users want?
Yeah. So for us, the Olympic Park is owned and run by LLDC. So they're a mayoral development.
LLDC being
London Legacy Development Corporation. So they're a mayoral development corporation that has kind of had the ability to kind of develop lots of buildings, aligned with the Olympic movement back in 2012. And to kind of regenerate the area. That was the kind of big mission behind it. And to a large degree, they've succeeded, and they're continuing to do a lot of that work. In the context of the work they do, they're developing a lot of spaces. They have a lot of floodplains. They have a lot of different challenges they are dealing with. And our solution is a part of addressing some of the kind of design that they do.
Got it. So what is your solution, or what particular bit of the Olympic Park are you thinking about?
So the ones particularly around the periphery, so not exactly where the Olympic Park is, but where some of a lot of the development work is happening, where they're experiencing flood. And so what our tech is, and we're still speaking to them about this, is being able to kind of review the area, identify where the hotspots are, and identify what opportunities they might have to address those hotspots, either after development has happened, if it was a development from a few years ago, or before it actually goes ahead to construction.
And so what do you do? So you said you work in software. So what are you kind of designing? Are you designing software to better help architects or better help planners, or?
So our user is typically the property owner, but our key customer is actually the insurer. And so being able those guys indeed. And that actually kind of uncovering them was a big part of our time on the program, is being able to identify who exactly we're working for.
And presumably the point about this is that flooding is an increasing problem, obviously, because
increasing risk. Absolutely. Yeah.
So as an insurer, I'm going to be very interested in what it is that you're doing.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And so talk to us, that makes total sense. So in terms of space, the space industry, what kinds of examples do we have for our listeners that we can get our heads around?
So I think if we look at Design to Deliver and the challenge that we had, and I think like Design to Deliver was a quite interesting experiment on its own, because I do think, and I'm going to go slightly on the side now, but I do think that like a big part of what we do as designers and the type of design that we do is managing complexity and making complexity slightly less complex sometimes. And what we did was adopting an approach that allowed us to connect things and like see how things were looking and how they were connected. And it was like we needed that, because it was three catapults working together, 12 SMEs. It was really and 3 location partners. So it was highly complex.
Yeah.
And for our challenge, we had 4 SMEs that were working precisely on making space data accessible and actionable. So we have users like farmers who could really benefit from space data, but they don't trust it.
They may have not even heard of it, or
they don't know about it. They don't trust it. They don't know where it comes from.
That's really interesting. So give us. So I'm a farmer, and you knock on my door, and I've got all kinds of worries and things going on in my brain. What do you say?
I think the example that I wanted to bring forward is the one of Map Impact, which is one of those SMEs we work with. And they have, again, is a bit more of a software solution. So it's a platform that they tested with farmers and landowners during their time in Design to Deliver.
So it's a mapping.
Map Impact is the name of the
So tell us what Map Impact is.
So it's a SME that does different types of, they have different products, to be honest, but they're all software based. So as a farmer, for example, you're able to access your land and see it and understand what's happened in terms of change on that
that's
land.
really interesting.
And it's quite interesting because space data, like we do have a bit of historical data as well. So you can see how it has changed up to now. And you can make decisions on how to change so that it doesn't get bad. But also you can use those data to report against the increasing requirements that the government is putting on farmers, for example. And also you can use it for scenario forecasting. So you can try and understand and model how in the future the land is going to look like if you continue this way or if you implement certain measures, for example, so that
really
it gets
amazing.
better.
And so that makes total sense. So this immensely useful things like being able to help in agriculture using space data. Where does the design bit of that come in? I suppose that's my question. So yes, there's this useful information. Getting it to the farmer, what's the design bit of that?
Yeah, so in that case, the company worked with a design consultancy, so not necessarily us in the first place, but we had specific designers helping them. And they've done a lot of user research, which is going to the farmer, understanding what they need, what they already have, what they're using, what are the challenges that they're facing with the things that they're using now, so that the company, Map Impact 2, could shape their solution in the best way for farmers to be used. And that means making things easy to use, to the point, and just like giving farmers what they need and not like maybe just data that they don't understand and they don't know how to use.
I think that seems to be the key of all this, isn't it? Sort of simplifying, taking sort of really complex ideas that very clever people who work here deal with every day and actually sort of, in a way, kind of reimagining it for the rest of us.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I think the translation piece that Giulia mentioned before is a really good way to capture it. I'm secretly also a designer. So before,
honestly, you don't have to. But I love design. I'm not a designer, but I'm obsessed by design. I'm obsessed by good design.
It can take over, but I think one of the ways that I've always found it really helpful to think about it is thinking about if creativity is coming up with an idea.
Yes.
And then innovation is delivering that idea in the real world. It's now like effective and producing value. Yeah. Design is the process of navigating the uncertainty in between. So it's getting you from, oh, there might be value in this thing, space data, to this is exactly how it's benefiting someone.
With all the constraints, presumably, that go along with this. When I think about design, I always think design is the product of constraints.
Yes, because a lot of people describe it as falling in love with the problem. So it's quite common, and I hope as an innovator you would say, as a leader of a company you would say, it's quite easy to become obsessed by your solution. Think, okay, this is the thing that is going to solve every problem, and you know it inside out. And what design is often about is just taking that step back, being okay with all the complexity, being okay with the fact that different customer groups might want different things, falling in love with the fact that this is a really difficult problem, thinking about all the different ways of solving it. But then after spending that time on the problem, suddenly the solution, and it's often what you didn't think it was going to be, pops out.
You have to be fairly malleable and
yes, you have to be very open.
I suppose. I mentioned the word constraints because things like cost and things like time and things like materials and all this stuff presumably is central to all this. These are the things that are going to guide you to coming up.
Incentives. That's a really big one. Is
politics.
Who's incentivized to do something about it? And then
that's really talk a little bit more about incentives.
Well, so I mean that's front of mind because that's exactly kind of what shaped one of our big shifts from one customer to another in the Design to Deliver program. Previously thinking this is a solution that would benefit property owners, and it does. We are working with some at the moment, but realizing that who really feels the pain, who then is more incentivized to do something about this, are insurers that are paying out, are having to increase premiums, reducing their affordability, or just pull out of markets altogether. Mm-hmm. And so all of a sudden, I think thinking about who experiences most of the pain because of these increased climate risks gave us a different lens on, okay, our product all of a sudden has a different set of values in a different context.
Mm-hmm. How many Tims are there? Are there like a load of Tims? What's the sort of scale of sort of companies that you're working with who are doing this kind of work?
Well, if we look at like how many applications we had for Design to Deliver,
Yeah,
we're looking at 100 applications across the 3 catapults, and it was open for like 1.5 months probably.
So, and how did it work? So you have 100 Tims coming up with brilliant ideas, and they're just geniuses and they're fantastic. What then happens? Does it kind of get whittled? Was it whittled down to?
I think so. There were really good ideas for all of us, I think, but we had a very specific focus on what we wanted to solve and like what we wanted to create impact.
Yeah, and this was about sort of nature, reconnecting with.
Yeah,
nature.
it was about basically working on behaviors to reconnect with nature and do better with and for nature.
Yeah.
And then we had our 3 specific challenges. Each catapult had a specific challenge that was more aligned with its focus and goals. So I suppose like the ones that we got were not only the really promising in terms of like technology that they were developing, but they were also really aligned with our thinking and what we were trying to do.
Behavior is an interesting term that you use. That's one of we don't really sort of think about sort of behavior in design, but that is sort of nudging people to change the way that they do things. Part of it, the sort of psychology of it.
Nudging, yes, but first, not to go back to my point about falling in love with the problem, first understanding how do people behave in different scenarios, and then working out, and actually I'm going to try and lean into a space analogy. In transport, you think a lot about control rooms, where people are pulling levers or now probably pressing buttons to, make sure trains go in certain places. And there, people's behaviors in a control room, like where do you look? What sort of evidence do you lean on to? Who do you trust? All matters in the way that you design that control room. And I would imagine in the space sector, you're thinking the same in, I don't know, I'm only space control room analogy, NASA HQ. Do we have an equivalent of that I'm sure we do in somewhere in the UK. Yeah. And you have to think about how do humans behave in those scenarios in order to design all those clever widgets that they're working with.
That's really interesting. Yeah, it's funny actually. I was chatting to a Boeing designer a few years ago, and we were discussing the sort of design philosophy of Boeing as opposed to sort of Airbus. And we were talking about knobs and switches. And he made the point about actually one of the problems we had, the lever that controls your flaps going up and down and the lever that controls the undercarriage going up and down are actually situated quite close, and that could cause problems. So they made the flap lever like a beautiful flap shape, and the undercarriage is actually a wheel. So there's absolutely no way
that's design.
It's good design, and it's thinking about how people think, and we like shapes, and we like tactile, and we like these sorts of things that can often get overlooked, I think, sometimes in our complexity. And it made me happy that something like the new Boeing 787, which we were talking about at the time, still had a wheel and a flap-shaped lever.
Yeah, I definitely think it's about putting oneself in somebody else's shoes, but also to the points that you were making as well earlier, it is about testing, like this iterative process, like having an idea, developing something, and then going right away to test it and see what happens, because we are all biased, we are humans.
And in an attempt to sort of answer 2 of your questions, when you asked how many Tims are there out there, in the UK economy, you've got hundreds of thousands of innovators like Tim, hundreds of thousands of people running small companies. Yeah. The question is, what sort of support do they need and at what time? So I would imagine your case why Design to Deliver was quite suited is you needed that space to connect with who are your real user groups, and you needed a little bit of testing support. And there are quite a lot of companies out that need that testing support. And what catapults often do is provide companies like Tim's the opportunity to test things in the real world.
And was that at the point of Design to Deliver?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it was almost like an experimental test bed for how things are going to work, rather than real world usage. I mean, obviously the things
real world uses only ever come out of being tested.
Of course. But obviously there's only a certain amount of companies that can be part of that group. But through that, you learn stuff, and then that can be used by other companies
and grow the companies that are involved in the program itself. Because of course, your solution can be amazing, but only when it's out there in the real world do you learn really how it works or how it doesn't work.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I wonder what your favorite examples of sort of the kind of work that you do are. Do you have kind of examples that you really like to sort of, that you've been sort of working on? You think, oh, this is just brilliant. This is going to be solve all kinds of problems. Your farmers' fields map usage one is a good one, I think.
I think that was a good one, yeah. And again, I'm probably going to go back again to not necessarily to a company that we work with and a specific solution, but just the mindset that we adopted to understand the field we were working in with Design to Deliver, because we had this big challenge and then 3 challenges that were aligned to that challenge, but very specific. And then 4 companies each trying to differently address those 3 challenges. So they were all kind of addressing a point in the bigger space of the problem that we were trying to solve. And I think that's quite interesting when you try to map it out and connect it to really understand where the impact and how the impact is flowing and where we need to act to make sure that we create impact in the space that we want. So it's not necessarily a company in this case, it's more like an approach that we adopted, and I'm hoping we're going to be using more and more.
What's the future of this? Where's all this going to go in the next sort of decade, particularly with sort of space? When are people going to realize that actually space is really useful? And that's, I kind of think that's kind of your department.
Yeah.
To bring all this kind of miracles that we're doing and present it in a way that's user friendly.
Yeah, exactly. I think more and more designers like us in the space sector will have that role of like connecting people and pieces, and maybe it doesn't need to get to a point where everyone understands exactly what space can do for the planet or in general. But still space is embedded in meaningful applications and things that they can use. So it's really about finding those opportunities for space and making sure that the potential of space has the biggest impact that it can have for people, for the planet, for space itself as well.
And making it user-friendly, that seems to be, I think for me, that's kind of my obsession in life, is for things to be simple and easy and streamlined and nice.
That's right. And I think it's probably my job to move from space to place and say that that the future, I think, of a lot of this design-led thinking is helping solutions be a lot more local and tailored to the needs of the communities, the people that they are designed to solve. And something that Connected Places Catapult is doing a lot of work on now is how do local authorities, how do combined authorities, these
people who make decisions,
yes, use design thinking or design inspired methods, like the way that you listen and consult with people, the way you hear people's needs, the way you design solutions for them, to ultimately deliver better services for people in places.
Have you noticed the kind of cultural change in the sort of work that you do amongst local authorities and government and decision makers?
Oh, Tim, do you want to have a go at that as a supplier, as a company? Do you have you noticed?
Yes. So I think both in my previous work, I have absolutely noticed a shift, but also as part of running OpenStead, we are currently running a pilot with a local authority. And one of the recent conversations that came about was was the recognition of our internal champion saying, we need to be better at how we perceive risk. We think of risk in a particular way.
Yes.
And I think in the realization of what is possible and what could be done, they realize that things are so siloed across different departments. Certain risks are just not dealt with because there's no department to deal with them.
Yeah.
Which was an interesting insight to realize that internally they're now aware that this needs to be something they address.
Humans are rubbish at risk. Kind of our brains are rubbish.
It's quite abstract.
It is. It's like if we can understand risk better, I think the world would be.
And bias comes in.
Yeah.
But yeah, there seems to be a cultural shift, perhaps. And actually, the Design to Deliver, the idea of it being focused towards reconnecting with nature seems to be a really kind of important thing.
Yeah, I think it was really positive. I think there's been a lot of movement in the space. And so it was like, for us, it was incredibly timely. It enabled us to actually start the company, to be on the program. But particularly in the kind of climate tech world, there's been a lot of innovation on climate solutions, typically focused on mitigation. And the moment that we're in now has been a pretty strong shift towards adaptation. And inherently within adaptation, there's a lot more nature that needs to be used because it's inherently good at addressing some of the risks that we're facing.
It really is. I worry that climate's sort of dropping off the political agenda of recent, this year particularly.
Something though that I think is connected as well to what you were saying about how like the future that is really exciting me and is connected to this point as well, and is about how we can leverage AI as designers to give voice to silent stakeholders. So we're all about talking to users and stakeholders and understanding their needs. But sometimes we can't talk to a tree. But I think there's a huge potential in that sense to give voice to those silent stakeholders, and for us to make sure that there's as little bias as possible when shaping how they look like and what
Can
they
we
say.
get rid of bias? I don't think you can get rid of bias.
I think it's about bringing more voices in.
Yes.
The more you share and like you get perspectives and like
That's a good point. That's a very good point. Thank you very much for stopping by.
Well, I mean, if we're doing plugs, I think it's worth plugging the Connected Places podcast.
Oh, yes. Yes. Tell us about it.
Well, so
is it witty and erudite and?
I mean, obviously, it's you should never compare two podcasts. I think it is the equivalent of this, but for transport,
Trains.
for the built environment, for cities, and for local growth.
Good.
So, if you're interested in that, please tune in.
I will be tuning in. I mean, we're all part of the same thing. We want to make the world a better place. We want to make it simpler. We want to make it more equitable. We want to make it healthier, etc. So we're all part of the same thing. Anyway, yes, Connected Places podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To hear future episodes of In Orbit, be sure to subscribe on your favourite podcast app. And if you'd like to find out more about how space is empowering your industry, visit the Catapult website or join them on social media.